Now, we're coming up with a story that reminds us that innovation doesn't only happen in startups, but also inside giant corporates. This next keynote takes us into one of HP's most ambitious internal ventures, a project born within the company that has managed to break silos, rethink processes, and bring a new technology to market with startup-level speed. To walk us through this journey, we have with us Xavier Juarez. He's the Construction Services Director in HP and someone who knows firsthand what it takes to innovate from the inside out. Xavier, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here. So today I'm going to talk, as Ruth mentioned, about an innovation that we did at HP. And actually, it's a robot for the construction side, which is probably not what you have in mind when you think about HP, which typically what comes to mind first are computers and printers. It's a robot that prints, so there's a certain connection. But actually, the reason we want to talk about it is not just to tell you about the product itself, but it's more about the story about how it came to life, which was it's actually an idea that came out of an internal innovation contest. And what we are very proud about is that we managed to bring it not just through the incubation phase and to try to test that it worked in real customers, but actually we have had it in the market for a couple of years already. And through this process, we have had quite a few learnings. And what I wanted to do is to tell you a little bit about how this was born, but more importantly, what we have learned about not just how the idea came to be, but actually how it came to life as a product in our portfolio. So what I wanted to do was to start by giving you a little bit of context about where this came from, right? Where this idea was born. And very briefly on the company, so HP actually was started as a startup, even though quite a long time ago in 1939. It was actually the first startup in Silicon Valley. So before that, everyone that graduated from Stanford was going to the East Coast in the US. So Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard were the first ones to create a company in a garage. And actually, the first product they did was not what probably you have in mind when you think about HP today. It was an audio oscillator that was used for the movie Fantasia of Disney. Company, of course, has grown quite a lot since then, and now it's a well-established corporation. It's more than 50 billion in revenue, more than 50,000 employees. It's an innovation-driven company, so we have a lot of patents every year. We are a technology company. And I don't want to extend a lot about, let's say, the characteristics of HP, but actually it's a company where we pride ourselves as well, not just about what we produce, but how we do it. We like to be a very equitative company, a very fair company, a very sustainable-oriented company. When we come to Barcelona, I work for HP here in Barcelona, in Sant Cugat del Vallès. We have our headquarters in there. Actually, we have a pretty big site from HP. So it started, we are celebrating 40 years this year. We have been celebrating along the year. Last week was the last one, the last event that we had in our year. It started to serve the construction industry. I'm going to go a little bit to that. It's today more than 2,600 employees. 800 of them are R&D engineers. We have a number of people that work for different businesses of HP, from sales to support to sales operations. But the heart of HP in Barcelona is actually that we have a couple of businesses that we manage globally from here, where we create new products and we bring them to the world. One of them is 3D printing, which is the last one that we launched. It was in 2015. The other one, which was the one the company established itself in Barcelona to do, was large format printing. It's printers that can print more than an A3. And this can be used to print signage. When you go to your bus shelter and you find a sign with an advertisement, this is printed with a large format printer. But this actually started 40 years ago printing CAD drawings, a drawing that an architect or an engineer does. They design in AutoCAD and they print on paper. And this is how we started, and this is still our biggest business in here. And this is what you will find typically if you go to any architect's office. Almost every architect in the world will have a plotter, even the smallest studios. We started this market. We still are the leaders. We have more than 50% of it. We have more than 50% of it because we continue innovating, even though it's a market that's quite established. And we have about 1 million printers in the field. I'm not explaining this because I want to tell you a lot about our established business, which we feel very proud about, but a little bit to provide some continuity with what I'm going to explain next, which is how do you approach innovation, right? And it starts always with which questions do you ask yourself. So we do printers. And we sell printers to construction, first to architects. So a fair question would be how can we sell more printers? And if you go to any construction site and you go to the construction trailer, no, the caseta de obra, you'll find a lot of paper there. They use a lot of paper to make decisions, new revisions of the drawings, what they need to build. But actually, you will find not a lot of printers. If you go to an architect, you'll find a printer almost in every architect. If you go to the construction site, you'll not find a lot of printers. So we have always had this question about what it would take to sell more printers to these construction trailers where paper is needed, right? And this is a question that we still ask ourselves. And we have found out it has more to do with the workflow and the business model than the printer itself. The printers that we have actually work pretty well in this environment when they are placed. But when we started doing this investigation, we found out that there was another question that we could be asking ourselves. Is, okay, they have paper, what do they use the paper for? And here you have a very typical case. This is on a project here close by in Barcelona. You go any country in the world and you'll find the superintendent, the project manager, and the majority of the people that coordinate in the job site with things like this, paper, with markups, annotations. And if you start following them through the job site, you find out that actually they do some things like the ones that you see here. They use the paper to translate the drawing that the architect created to the floor. Why do they mark the drawing to the floor? They mark basically points and lines. They mark it because somebody needs to go and build the walls there, and they need to know where the wall needs to be built. And actually, they almost redraw the entire drawing on the floor with chalk. They use chalk. They need to mark corners. They need to mark, when they need to mark a line, they use what they call a chalk line, azulete in Spanish, which is essentially two people holding a piece of rope with chalk, and they snap it. And actually, this is a technique that was invented 30,000 years ago to build the pyramids, and it's still being used today. Because before the pyramids, they didn't know how to do a straight wall, and they needed to do a big one, so they invented this. We're still using it today. There is a problem with that, which is that it's pretty accurate, but actually it's very labor-intensive. So you have a lot of people doing this all day long, and the people, actually, well, I'm doing this all day long. I'm signaling my monitor, sorry for that. And this is actually pretty labor-intensive. And these people that you see here are not the latest person that came to the job site. They tend to be the most skilled people in the job site, because if you make a mistake and you need to bring a wall down and build it again, that's a lot of money. So you give this to the project manager, to the superintendent, the foreman, so typically people that make quite a bit of money. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. And they make quite a bit of money because they are skilled and they need to do things like coordinating or doing quality control. The last thing they want to do is to be on their knees all day long marking with chalk. But this is what they do today. So rather than trying to think about how to make new printers for the job site, which we still try to do and we are having some success, we ask ourselves another question, which is, can we help construction companies beyond printing better on the construction site? And most importantly, now that we have discovered that they spend so much time doing this and that they don't like it, because it's important, but it's not nice, can we help them to do it faster so that they can save time in a process that's very intensive in time and labor? Can we help them prevent mistakes? And can we do it in a way that's easier for the operators and that we can free up their time so that they can do higher value-added tasks? And this is how this project was built. But before going there, typically before you embark yourself in a project, you need to ask yourself as well, okay, can we solve this problem? Is this a big problem to solve? So am I going to resolve something important for the industry? Or am I going to solve something that's not going to be that relevant? And let me share with you a couple of data points. Let me start with, let's say, the headline, which is improving productivity by 1% in construction is $100 billion. There are not a lot of things in the world where a 1% improvement means $100 billion. Productivity in construction is one of them. It goes beyond what I was showing, but this is an important part of what I was showing. Let me explain it a little bit more elaborate. The productivity in manufacturing has been increasing 3% every year. When you go to agriculture, it's even faster. So when you compare what an agricultural exploitation does today versus 20 years ago, it's more than twice as fast. In the last 50 years, it has more than multiplied by 10 productivity. In manufacturing, it's about 2x in the last 20 years. In construction, it's flat. The amount of output an employee can do in a job site is the same one today as in the 1960s, and even if we go a little bit back, it's the same one that they had when they built the Empire State Building. The Empire State Building was the latest improvement in construction technology in terms of the process. Okay? So if every employee can produce the same, and construction is growing at about 3% every year because there's more population in the world, so you need to build more. If you produce the same per person and construction is growing, there's only one way to solve it, which is let's put more people to it, right? But unfortunately, that's not what's happening because the second chart I'm showing here is the job openings that are unfulfilled. In this case, it's in the US, but it's not that different in Europe. The number of job openings that are not fulfilled in construction every year is growing because younger people do not want to work on the job site. There is no technology. It's not the most rewarding work that they can think of when they graduate. If people produce the same and there are no more people, there's only one way to resolve the equation, which is let's help people produce more. And this is through technology, which is the third chart. And it shows that over the last, this is the last 5 years, but I could show a longer time span, the investment in technology companies has been increasing because this is the future of construction. I could show a similar chart of the investment of construction companies in technology, and it's also growing. Okay. Now, this looks like super elaborate in terms of we did a lot of research in order to come to these conclusions, but the reality is that this came a little bit after the fact. So we started a little bit different. Because this project we started as an internal innovation contest. So back at the end of 2017, so some time ago already, we decided that we wanted to bring new ideas to the business. And we do this regularly. We had a especially ambitious edition of, let's say, this contest back then in 2017, and we set up a number of teams, and we gave them 10 weeks to find ideas, iterate them with customers. It was very important that they iterated them and bring them back to us. At that moment, I was managing the DesignJet business for HP. I was the product and strategy director for DesignJets. So it's a pretty well-established business I was mentioning before. So I was part of the jury. The team that had the best idea was the team that you can see here, which was the team that after going to job sites told us that they thought that they could solve a bigger problem than printing on the job site. And to prove it to us, by the way, just let me go back. Here you have the team, plus our general manager at the time, Guayente, that was the sponsor of this initiative. I'm going to tell you later about the learnings in the process. Management sponsorship is key. Otherwise, it's very hard to try to do something that's a bit disruptive with your regular business model. So this is the presentation that they did, or this is the last part of the presentation that they did after the 10 weeks of the innovation contest. So what they had already was a first prototype of a product that solved the problem that they had explained more or less in the same way that I explained here. A bit more elaborate, but I reused some of their material. So they already had a first prototype. It was, of course, pretty crude. It was a Roomba that you can buy, a programmable Roomba that you can buy online at Amazon for $500. And we said we built on top of Printhead, and we proved that we could print on the cardboard. It was a great presentation, one of the best I've seen, so we decided to reward them with, let's say, the first place in the contest. And what we did different this time than previous times, and it was a key for being able to bring this to market, is that rather than letting them keep working on this on their free time, we offer them the possibility of setting up a team that for some time would work on this exclusively. So we offer the team the possibility to work on this full time. The only condition is that they had to come back with progress every month, actually every week. And the progress had to be the same type of progress that you expect in a startup. So 1 month after setting up the team, that was 3 people, they brought the next iteration of what you saw before to a job site. This was in January, 1 month after finishing the contest. This was a job site, a construction site here it was in Cornellà. And they already did their first design iteration. We just put some weight on the robot because it was not marking. We would have never, ever done this with a printer. So we would have never brought a printer to a job site or to a customer site until maybe 2 years down this process, because we know our customers very well. We have a lot of insights. We have a reputation to keep in that market. We have a lot of learnings, and we bring things that are more cooked. But in this case, we had no clue about what customers would want. So one of the keys for the team was giving them focus, but also pushing them to bring back customer feedback very, very soon. And they did. 2 months later, they realized that with a marker, they would not be able to progress, so they put a print hit in there. The nice thing about doing a robot is that's pretty cool, so you can ask other engineers to give you a hand a couple of hours a week, which is what they did here. And actually, we had our first version of the robot that looks similar to what we have today. Okay? So this was the incubation phase. I'm not going to extend much longer here because I want to move to the next part, which to me is even more important. So the team did a great, great job for 3 years on iterating and coming back with new learnings every month. They were coming with learnings with customers that wanted to use it, customers that were willing to pay. They told us that in order to pay for this, they needed something. We learned something very important in the first visit already, which is that we needed 3 millimeters of accuracy. If it was worse than that, it was not good for them. So we focused all our efforts on getting that. We would have never got that just with research. We had to bring a robot in there and have people look at it and give us feedback, right? They iterated, they opened up partnerships, they called other companies that had technologies that we could work with. They did a great, great job of integrating customer insights, agile development, partnerships with other companies. In 2021, they had already managed to have 3 customers pay for the work that they did in their job sites. They brought prototypes that had to work with an engineer next to them with a Linux console open to it, so it was not productized, but it worked and it did the trick. And we did 3 projects in the Barcelona area where customers paid us, which is the ultimate thing to know that you have something that has value. Before then, it's hard to do that. And again, we would have never done that with a printer, so we needed to operate in a different way. And this was having a very small team, very focused. So when we realized that we had something, or when we more than realized, when we proved that we had something that had value, the next phase, okay, we cannot keep this team just with 3 people. Otherwise, we are never going to bring this to market. So we want to scale the team. They had, let's say, brought the project to the point where we had to bring, where we thought we had enough information to bring it to market. Still, with a lot more uncertainty than when we do printers. When we do printers, we have a ton of data, we have a ton of insights. I can project the forecast of a new device plus minus 2%. Here, we had to create a new market from scratch, so the level of uncertainty was big, which meant that we had to operate in a different way if we wanted to bring it to market, but we could not do it with 3 people, we had to bring more people to it. So actually, this was when we decided to go to the next phase. We moved from incubation to productization. Okay? And we built a team, and here you have the first setup of the team and the first group picture that we took. We are wearing the reflective vest because this is what we bring when we go to job sites, and this team has been a lot in customer sites. Everyone, I've been in a ton of them, and everyone in the team, from R&D to sales to product marketing, has been a ton of times in customer sites. And this has been one of the keys of the project. The first time that we built a team, we decided to do it a little bit how we do a new printer. We set up a project team, we assign a product manager, we tell somebody in the different disciplines to work on this. And we realized soon that this was probably not going to give us the speed that we needed. Okay, the difference between this project and a typical project for our mainstream markets was that we had a lot of unknowns here. We didn't know a lot of things about what we needed to do in order to have success, from the specific product implementation to the business model to how to bring it to market to how to express the value proposition to customers. We had a lot of things that we had to resolve. And we couldn't resolve it, and we needed to resolve them soon because we needed to prove that it was viable. We started working the regular way for a few months, and we were progressing, but we wanted to be faster. So what we decided at the time, and this was a moment where I moved more from coaching, sponsoring the team to leading it, was let's put this team, all the disciplines, under one smaller team, but very focused, where you don't need to get 5, 6 different directors aligned for every decision, which is normally what we do, but where we can make decisions much faster and take a different level of risk because we need to learn faster. And the objective was to take all these iterations that the team of 3 engineers had been doing for the last 3 years and convert them from the prototype that you see on the screen to this, which is actually a real product that we are selling today. this looks like we kind of prepared this for a long time, but actually we converged in this video like 3 weeks before launching. It was a pretty much of a rush, much faster than we do normally with our typical launches where we invest much more time. But we converged to a lot of the functionality pretty late in the process because we were learning until late. So you have already seen the video. This is a product that what brings to customers is you can be much faster doing your layout, so you can shorten your construction schedules, but more importantly, you can keep your skilled labor doing other more important things than doing layout. And the last one, which is one easy solution to do it all, we have designed this so that it can be operated by the same person that's doing the layout today. We are not intending to replace the person. We want to empower this person to be able to do things better without having to be on their knees. So what I wanted to do in the last part of the session is to tell you a little bit about what we learned through this process, especially this last part. Okay, incubating, the first part of the project was incubating. Let's keep 3 people very focused and let's ask them for results. They did an amazing job of coming back with customer feedback and technical iterations every month. And the second part, which was bringing it to market, was let's set up a team very focused. We decided to move from a multidisciplinary team to a team with all the disciplines under the same umbrella with a lot of focus, and this gave us a lot of agility because essentially we could take all the decisions and all the risks in one single team. We didn't have to spread risks among different teams that maybe didn't have all the context. I'm going to talk a little bit about the learnings. I just wanted to use one slide to tell you about progress. So we launched this at the end of 2023. We have been in the market for a little bit more than 2 years now. And this market didn't exist. So how do you measure if you're doing well or not, right? And this is always arguable because you can always argue that you could be doing even better, right? In the end, there is no market. You cannot measure market share. To us, the key was, let's replace manual layout by automated layout. And we have been growing steadily and pretty fast over the 8 quarters that we have been in the market. We have accumulated, I'm saying, more than 5 million square meters. Actually, we are closer to 10 million now because now every month we are adding quite a bit to this chart as we are increasing the number of robots in the field, which is quite a bit. So there were 10 million square meters of layout that were being done by hand that now we do with a robot. The best news is that this is less than 1% of the potential, right? So we are still in the very beginnings of creating this market, but it's evolving well. Now, what have we learned through this process? And I just wanted to touch on a few of the points that I have in the next slides. First, it was very important to have management support. It's impossible to do something that's disruptive with your traditional business if you don't have top-down management, because there's always a need for resources in the main business. If you don't protect the resources for the incubation that is more uncertain, it's going to be very hard to compete because it's much harder to prove the ROI for a new project, right? The next one, aside from management support, was, as I mentioned, having the team together rather than split in different functions. This made the decision chain much shorter, and we needed speed because what we needed was to learn. We didn't know what we didn't know, and trying to predict it based on our knowledge on a mainstream market wasn't going to cut it. But the next one is the one that I have here. It's talent. If you don't have the right people, this is not going to work. And the right people, of course, means having talent, but also the people with the right mindset. Not everyone feels comfortable with the same level of risk and uncertainty. So you need to find people that will feel comfortable in this project. If they want certainty, and they believe that they are going to be measured by certainty, which it's the case in many functions in a corporation, they are going to struggle in a project like this. The good news is that there's a lot of people in a corporation that feel very comfortable in projects like this. Now, when you find them and you put them in a project that allows them to take more risk than usual, you need to do the next thing, which is protect them. It's our role as the managers of the team to make sure that we protect them from an ecosystem that may be asking them for a level of certainty that's not the one that we need in this project. And they are not the ones that need to bear this brand, right? So we need to be the ones that block them so that they are allowed to take risks. And let's say my role was to take risks on their behalf, right? So that they would be protected. Because otherwise, at some point, they are going to start becoming slower. Which brings me to the next one. You need to accept risk because you need to learn. I'm going to explain just a brief example. At the end of 2022, we had already a productized version that it was very close to being brought to market. We had to go through the last phases, but it was very close to go to market. We forced to have pilots with customers that signed a contract that they would pay. And probably much earlier than we would have had in a normal product. We did the first 6 pilots, 3 of them were a success, 3 of them we failed pretty bad. The good news is that these 3 customers today bought more than 1 unit already. So we managed to keep the relationship with them. But we didn't get the results we wanted. In one of them, we realized that the magnetic field of a certain construction project in the US was turning the robot crazy, and it was getting deviations of more than 1 centimeter. If we would not have done this pilot, and it's true that you blush a bit when you're in front of a customer and the robot starts doing something that you didn't expect, our development would have been pushed back probably by 3 to 6 months, because we wouldn't have learned about this magnetic field issue on a specific type of construction in the US until then. Taking the risk means that sometimes you're going to fail. We took it in a way that we could keep the relationship with the customer, and we're happy that actually the customer that I'm mentioning, it's the one that has the most robots today. It's a very innovative customer, and today they have more than 10 robots. At the time we failed, but it allowed us to save 3 to 6 months. We would not do this in a mainstream business because we already would have known this. We would have done this internally, but in this time we didn't. Also, it's very important to focus on the right things. Normally, when you do products in a corporation, you take into account the value proposition, repairability, manufacturability, assurance of supply, cost. You need to take all this into account as well in an incubation like this, but you need to focus your limited resources in one single thing at the very beginning, which is, do I have a product for my customer? And the rest of things, since it's still small, you can manage a bit with brute force. Then you fix them, right? Once you have found the right product market fit, you start working on making it more repairable, more manufacturable, etc. But if you try to diverge and do everything at the beginning, you are never going to prove that your business is viable. And eventually, you will not have the chance to do it because somebody will decide that you have spent too long trying to do that, right? So at the very beginning, you need to focus on one single thing, which is this good for my customers? Then, and we had a lot of cases where we had to take hard decisions in there. Our mechanical engineers, for them, it's almost like it's very painful to design something that they know that they could do for 1/10 of the cost. But doing it for 1/10 of the cost means that they would need to invest 6 months of development time doing that. And at the very beginning, when you're going to have very few units, the cost of the engineer doing that for 6 months is higher than what you're going to save the first year. But their DNA is very settled on product lines that sell thousands or hundreds of thousands. So you need to be very, very directional that at the beginning, don't focus on that. I don't care using a part of the shelf that's 10, 100 times more expensive if it helps me get to market fast. We are going to have time to be more efficient later, right? When I'm saying clear on strategy, flexible on execution, I'm just going to give you a quick example. Our strategy was to sell this as a service business model because we thought it was the best way to keep adding value to our customers through channel to be able to get to a lot of customers. There were moments where some customers have told us that this is not the way that they wanted to buy. It would have been easy to try to pivot the business model, but we thought that if we did that, our ability to scale the value that we provided in the future would be jeopardized. So we decided not to do this change. However, if you decided to go to general contractors and suddenly you find that data center companies that do racking are a better fit, and the business model and the general purpose of the robot is the same, you can pivot, you can switch. And this is the part where you need to make sure that when you're making decisions, you need to be flexible, but be clear on the things that are that you don't want to change of the future that you have thought. And let me talk about the last one, and I'll conclude with this one. When you're in a startup, you are limited in resources. So there's no risk of having a problem of what you leverage or not. When you're in a corporation, the incubation team typically is limited on resources, but you have a number of things available to you. And not all of them are good for what you're doing. You need to know which things to leverage and which ones not. Being HP has opened us many doors. There are resellers that we could open the door to talk to them because we were HP. And there are partners that we work with like Trimble, Leica, Topcon, that being HP helped us talk to them so that we could integrate their technology with ours. This is something that we leverage our brand. We are also leveraging our reach. We are present almost in any country, so we know how to sell in almost any country in the world. We don't need to set up a bank account if you want to start selling in Germany. Something that we didn't want to leverage, for example, was our planning processes. This is so unpredictable that taking the planning team that knows how to manage millions of things with a lot of predictability would have turned everyone crazy, both teams, right? We didn't want to leverage our sales team. And this one is tough because you have a sales team that sells in every country in the world that sees the robot and likes it. And they would like to sell it. But selling a robot to the construction company probably takes 10 times the effort at the very beginning that it takes to sell a printer. If you bring something that it's cool, but it takes more effort to sell because it's something that you need to convince people to buy something that they didn't have in their mind, than your mainstream product, soon they are going to realize that they are not going to make their quota with this, and they are going to shift focus to something else. So it's tempting to be able to use your 300 sales guys to sell this, but it's not the right decision. The right decision is to start with 4, but very focused on this, and start slower. And this is the same thing in many other areas. I just brought this to give an example that I think is illustrative. And with this, I would like to conclude the presentation, so hopefully it was interesting. I'm sure that there are many other learnings in many other entrepreneurships in other companies, but I wanted to share a bit of what we have learned through the process, and probably in a couple of years, I could come back with more. Thank you very much.